guys, got an interesting vegetable for us to work with today. This is a member of the squash family. You could never guess what its name was by looking at it. It just doesn't have anything to do with its name. It's yellow and it's oval, and it's not called the sun squash. It's called a spaghetti squash, believe it or not. So we're gonna make spaghetti today using this squash, and we're gonna make beet balls instead of meatballs using these beets. So real quick, let's just go over here real quick and just talk about the squash for a minute. So spaghetti squash and beet balls instead of meatballs with a pomodoro sauce, which is a real simple tomato sauce with a little garlic, onion, tomatoes, and fresh herbs. Very basic, but really good and fresh. Spaghetti squash. It's known as a winter squash or a hard shell squash. Like all squash, it comes from Central America. And the explorers who visited Central America would take the squashes and the squash seeds and travel back around the world. And spaghetti squash in particular got really popular in China in the 1800s. So they started growing a lot of it. So it originated in Central America with every other squash we know, and then made its way to China in the 1800s, and then back to America in 1936 from a seed company, actually, the Burpee Seed Company. Sometimes you see burpee plants still at Home Depot and stuff. So what is it? Is it good for us? Yes, it's very good for us. It's known as a nutrient-dense food. What that means is, when we say dense, it means we're packing a lot of nutrients into a small package. There's a lot of vitamins and minerals in here. Just a few. It's a good source of fiber, vitamin C, manganese, vitamin B6, and vitamin A. So just like all squash, it's very, very good for you. And this one's really, really fun to work with. So we're gonna make a sauce first. So let's make the sauce. Like I said, real simple sauce. I'm just gonna take a clove of garlic and open it up and give it a nice chop. And then I'm gonna take an onion. Here's a half. I'm gonna use a quarter of an onion, so I'm just gonna take the end pieces off and compost them. And that's a half. I'm gonna take a quarter. So there's a quarter of an onion. We can compost the peel and the skin. You can take another layer off. It's a little green like that, so you can even see my finger through. I usually toss that in the compost too. Okay, so let's warm up our pan while we're getting our onion ready. I'm just gonna do a nice small dice with our onion. So little squares. Okay. And we can get some olive oil in our pan. Get that warmed up. And since we're going to use this beet today, I want to use some of these beet greens too. So you can use all the parts of the beets, just like all root vegetables. And these will add a nice little green to the sauce too. So I'm just going to roll those guys up, chop them up nice and thin. And we'll get our garlic in. And it's going to pop up like popcorn. Remember, we call that bloom in the garlic and the olive oil. Get our garlic in, and as soon as that starts to pop up, then we can add our onions. And while we're waiting for that to warm up, we can just get our fresh herbs ready. We got some fresh oregano from over in the kindergarten garden. And I'm just gonna pull the leaves right down, and then pop off the top piece, and compost our stems. And I also have some fresh thyme from out in the garden. So I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm just going to kind of strip the leaves off and compost the stems. And make sure we don't get any of those sticks in there. Okay, so our garlic's all nice and bloomed, so I'm going to get our onions in. We're going to let those cook for just a minute. I kind of like to cook the onions till they're like translucent, which is like almost be able to see through them. And they also help, another word that we haven't said in a while, they help deglaze that garlic. When I say deglaze, it means kind of pull the garlic off the pan so it doesn't stick there and start to roast. We want that fresh garlic flavor, not the roasted garlic flavor for this sauce. Okay, so while the onions are cooking, I'm just going to give our herbs a little shot. So we got fresh thyme, fresh oregano. You can use basil, parsley, whatever fresh herbs you like. Then we'll throw our beet greens in there. Then cook with our onions. And while that stuff's cooking for a minute, we can start working on our beet balls. So again, we could roast this whole thing off. We could just peel it. I could take this top and the bottom and compost the bottom of it and save the greens, obviously. We could just peel this whole thing and chuck it right in the oven if we wanted to. I'm just going to peel with my knife and roast it, but it would take a while. I did some a little earlier just to show you. It took about an hour to roast a whole beet. So what I've been doing is I've just been cutting them into smaller little pieces so they cook faster. But if you wanted to, the appearance of a real giant meatball, you could do that too. And here's what they look like, after they've been roasted. That's a whole beet that's been roasted. It shrinks a lot, but it looks just like a meatball to me. But I'm gonna cut them a little smaller and compost this stuff. But it's time to get back to our sauce for a second. So our onions, you'll see what I mean by translucent. They're kind of almost see-through, but they're not browned. We're not really looking to brown the onions or the garlic in this sauce because then I'll take on a completely different flavor. I'm just gonna add my tomatoes and my herbs. I'm gonna do a cup and a half, so about half a cup. Cup and a half of crushed tomatoes. Get those fresh herbs in there, and some salt and pepper. And just give it a nice little stir. Let all the flavors come together. And we'll let that simmer for a minute. Okay. And then we're back to our beet. So I'm just going to cut the beet in half it again, and then half it again. So I'm gonna get 8 pieces out of each beet. And I'm just gonna round off some of the sharp corners to give it more of a rounded appearance. So it's more like a little meatball. And we'll save those little scraps for a salad or something. And just gonna toss them up. Again, you could probably guess, a little olive oil, salt, and pepper. Our go-to. Keep an eye on our sauce. A little olive oil. A little salt and pepper. Toss them up. Nice even coating. You don't need too much. And you see I have some that are almost ready that I put in a little earlier. I'm just going to roast these guys at 375, 400 degrees for about 15 minutes. And then for our squash, you saw what I did. We just basically just cut it in half and we pull out and dig out the seeds. I'm going to save this one because I'm not going to use it right now. And we let it roast for a while. And when it's done, this one's almost ready. You'll see it's starting to steam itself. And you'll know when it's ready when it's super soft. This one needs a couple more minutes. But I have one here that's already done. And you'll see some of the beet juice leached into it. That's why it's a little purple. It's usually all yellow, but it looks kind of cool with the beet juice. You just take your fork. Just take a fork and kind of pull it off the sides. And you'll see the squash is like little noodles. These little spaghetti noodles. This one cooled off for a minute, so it's not too hot to touch. So you want to let them cool for a minute. Let me grab a plate. And I'm just going to take some of those noodles and make a nice little pile of spaghetti right in the middle of the plate. There we go. So you see, it just looks just like spaghetti. But tons of vitamins and minerals. I'm going to take some sauce. Right on top. And get those the beet balls. And put them right on top. So roasted beets. With our spaghetti squash with pomodoro sauce. And grab a little piece of oregano. Put a nice little garnish on there. And there you go, guys. Spaghetti squash and beet balls. Okay, guys, we're back. Here's our beautiful spaghetti squash and beet balls. My question for you guys is, why are we always cooking vegetarian meals? Why do we focus on vegetables so much in this class? Put it in your Grow Cook journal and let us know. See you soon.